Good morning, Rabbi Isai. Good Chodesh. It'll be a Chodesh of Geula and Yeshua for all of Am Yisrael. So we've arrived, I believe, at Siman Tov Reish Hey 605, which is entitled Minhag Kaparos Be'erev Yom HaKippurim, the custom of doing Kaparos, a ritual of atonement, Be'erev Yom HaKippurim, on the day before Yom Kippur. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Ma she'nohagim la'asos kapara. The custom which there is to do a ritual of atonement Be'erev Yom Kippur, the day before Yom Kippur, in which Lishchet Tarnago, we slaughter a chicken I'll call Ben Zachar for every male child, V'loima olav psukim, and to say over it certain verses, Yesh limnoah haminhag. This custom should be stopped. Why should it be stopped? The Shulchan Aruch is of the opinion that this custom falls into the category of what we call Darkei Ha'amoiri. Darkei Ha'amoiri, the ways of the non-Jews, which is a general category which includes many types of practices which are somewhat irrational, seem a little superstitious, which are forbidden, because we presume that such practices have their roots in some early idolatrous practice, and therefore such a thing is forbidden. And the Shulchan Aruch holds that this practice falls under the same category and it should be stopped. Says the Ramah, Hagor, V'yesh mihagoinim, but there are some goinim shekosvu minhag zeh, who do record this minhag, this custom, as being correct practice. V'chein kosvu oisei rabim ha'achroinim, and likewise many of the later authorities also record this practice. And this is also the common practice in all of our regions. And it should not be changed, because it is a early practice of pious people. Although it appears to be a machlokes between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah whether this practice should be followed, should be performed or not. In fact, nowadays this practice is commonly performed both by Ashkenazim and also by many Sephardim. And this is because some authorities suggest that although Shulchan Aruch looks negatively at this practice and he calls it Darkei Ha'amoiri, some suggest that the way this practice is followed nowadays is somewhat different than the way it was originally done, and Shulchan Aruch would not forbid it the way it's done nowadays. The main difference being that nowadays the end product of the entire kapara service is we take this chicken and we give it or its value to tzedakah. In earlier times, this doesn't necessarily appear to have been the case. There are various other versions of this custom which are recorded, like, for example, you take the chicken and you put it by the door of your house, or other variations of this, which indeed seem irrational and don't seem to have any real to'eles. Whereas giving the chicken to tzedakah seems a very well-founded principle, a well-founded idea, which is found many times in Chazal, that giving something to tzedakah is a tzechus and a protection and a derech of tshuva and so on and so forth. And therefore, the way it's practiced nowadays, the Shulchan Aruch would also accept this minhag. Mishnah Berurah tells us that when performing this procedure, one should have in mind that everything that's happening to this chicken should really be happening to you. It should be your punishment. And when a person has these thoughts, HaKadosh Baruch Hu counts it as though it actually happened to him and he forgives him. The correct time to do this, to do Kaparos, is either just before daybreak, early in the morning when it's still dark, or some say right away in the day, straight after Shachris. If it is done during the night, then one has to take care that the lighting is up to scratch, because we take the chicken, we give it to a sheikh to shecht. Shechita cannot be done in the dark, so there has to be good lighting. Mishnah Berurah also criticizes those who have a great number of people gathering for the Kaparos, and what happens is there's tremendous pressure on the sheikhet to get everybody's chickens done, everybody's chickens slaughtered, and we end up, chas v'shalom, with nevelos, with chickens that weren't shechted properly, with a knife that wasn't checked properly. And to avoid this chashash, the Mishnah Berurah suggests a number of different eitzahs. One eitzah which he suggests is that rather than having a public kaparos for the entire town where everybody comes and push and shove and it's a whole big balagan, the sheikhet should go separately to different people's houses and do shechita for each family separately. That way, there's more Yishuv Hadas, things are calmer. Even having said that, the Mishnah Berurah says if the neighbors sort of come round while one family is doing it, at very least there's a halacha in the Hilchos Shechita that if the knife is checked after the Shechita and it's found to be invalid, it's got some sort of pigam and something wrong with it, then the Shechita which was just done has been invalidated. Having said that, says the Mishnah Berurah that every family who brings chickens for Kaparos to the Shochet, before that family goes back home, the Shochet should check his knife between each family so that at least we know these people's chickens are kosher, these people's chickens are kosher, and so forth. If this is not practical, Mishnah Berurah suggests two other eitzes. First of all, he says the Kaparos don't have to be done on Erev Yom Kippur, although that might be the most ideal time, but they can be done any time during Aseres Yimei Tshuva, so we can reduce the pressure on the Shochet that way. Finally, he says that rather than doing kaparos with a chicken, one can do kaparos with money instead. You take the money and you give it to the tzedakah, and that too can be considered a form of atonement. Back to the Ramah. For Noyagin, says the Ramah, how exactly do we do this? The custom is that we take likach tarnago, we take a rooster, zacha lezacha for a male, v'lenekeva, and for a female, leichin tarnagolit, we take a hen, a female chicken. So a male for a male, a female for a female. V'leichin limu'uberes, and for a pregnant lady, we take for her shnei tarnagolim. We take for her 2 birds, ulai teleit zacha, because perhaps she'll give birth to a male child, and therefore we want to have for her, so we take 2, for her a female, and also a male chicken for the sake of the child who might be a male. If the child is actually a female, then we are happy with the 1 female chicken being a kapara for both the mother and the child, because in essence 1 chicken can be used for 2 people. Nevertheless, Mishnah Berurah cites some authorities who say that ideally an individual chicken should be used for every person, and in this case of the mu'uberes, of the pregnant lady, perhaps one should even take 3 chickens. 1 for her, a female chicken for her, female chicken maybe it's a girl, a male chicken maybe it's a boy. Interesting point over here, why an unborn child should need a kapara. Why do we need to do a kapara for this unborn child who presumably hasn't done any averis? A number of ideas which are suggested. First of all, we've probably all heard of the concept of Gilgul. We can have a neshama that's come from a previous life which has already averis in its cheshbon, which needs some sort of kapara. Who knows what neshama this child has? Maybe they have a neshama that needs a kapara for some previous goings on, so we do for it kaparas. Alternatively, sometimes there can be other types of gezeirus from shamayim, which don't necessarily have to do with direct cheshbon of persons. Some gezeirah that Hashem has made, who knows why, and the kaparas can actually help to protect. When we swing the kaparos around our head, we say the sentence Zeh chalifosi, Zeh tmurasi, Zeh kaparosi. This should be in my place, this should be my exchange, this should be my atonement. And the words are chalifosi, tmurasi, kaparosi. There's a very particular kavana over here because the Rosh Tevos of these 3 words, chalifosi, tmurasi, kaparosi, are ches, tof, kaf, which are the Rosh Tevos of the word chatach, which means to cut, or sometimes to apportion, to give out, to cut something out into portions. And we speak of HaKadosh Baruch Hu being the Orach Chaim l'chol chai. It's the loshon of the piyut on Rosh Hashanah. And Yom Kippur, Hashem gives out, apportions life to every living being. And in fact, the Malach who's in charge of sort of giving out the life to each being is called Chatach. And therefore that's why this nusach, this wording is used. We also say the psukim which begin B'nei Adam Yoshvei Choshech V'Tzal Maves. It's also said along with the Kaparos ritual, and it also has a very early source that's mentioned already in Rishonim. Coming back to the Ramah, U'Boicharim B'Tarnagolim Levonim. We make a point of choosing white chickens. Al Derech Shenema, because there's some allusion to the pasuk in Yiu Chatoeichem Kashanim. If your sins will be scarlet red, Kasheleg Yalbinu, they will whiten like snow. Now here too, the Mishnah Berurah tells us that although there is such a custom, one should not overly stress this point, i.e. one shouldn't pay extra money to get a white chicken, because that would indeed bring the practice of Kaparos into Darkei HaEmoiri. We in fact find in the Gemara that there were some idolatrous practices where they made a point of having white chickens, and so as to keep far from that, one shouldn't make a point of paying extra money for a white chicken. If you get one easily amongst all the other chickens, you've just got one, we take a white one. But if you don't have it without paying extra money, you don't go for it. Another point which the Mishnah mentions here is that if there's no chicken available, one can likewise use other living creatures for Kaparos. For example, one can even take a fish. However, one word of warning which the Mishnah does say is that one should not take animals which could be offered on the Mizbeach. As a chicken, for example, is not one of the birds that can be used as a korban, so it can be used for Kaparos. But one should not take animals which can be used on the Mizbeach, and this is because we want to avoid any similarity to giving some impression that maybe this animal is, or this bird is a korban, which we would then be being oiver on the Isser of bringing Karbonas outside the Beis HaMikdash. We don't want to come close to that in any way, so we're making sure to use an animal which is no good as a korban. Back to the Ramah, the custom is to give the kaparos, the chickens, afterwards to the poor, or alternatively, to give money to the aniyim, to the poor instead. Now, Mishnah mentions that each one of these options has got a certain advantage. On the one hand, if you send him a chicken, so the poor person has got food right away. He doesn't need to go out and buy something. He doesn't need to go to the store. Doesn't need to look for it. He's got it. Here it is. He's got a chicken. He can eat it. On the other hand, there might be a certain negative feeling when you send an Oni a chicken from Kaparos. The Oni might get the feeling, well, this guy sort of dumped all his Averis on the head of this chicken, and then he sent it off to me, a sort of negative impression. So you have to weigh up carefully what the situation is, what the feelings of that Oni are going to be. You try and do your best, and whatever seems more appropriate in those circumstances, that is what you should do. V'yesh Mekoymes, says the Ramah, going further, there are places shenogim lelech al hakavoros, there are places where it's customary to visit the Beis HaKavoros, the cemetery, or the harbis bit stocker, and to give extra stocker. All of this on Erev Yom Kippur. V'hakol minhag yofe, and all of this is obviously good and praiseworthy minhagim. Coming back to Kaparos, the Ramah proceeds, V'yesh lahasme shchitas hakaparos, one should slaughter the kaparos miyad la'achar she'echzirei olav, right after having swung them around your heads, the samach yodav olav, and having put your hands, rested your hands on top of the chicken, the mus korban, in the manner of a korban. So here's an angle of kaparos which I don't think is so commonly practiced nowadays, to actually put your hands on the head of the chicken, similar to the way one does when bringing a korban. And the Mishnah writes that some poskim say that this practice should not be done because, once again, it's too similar to the practice done when bringing a korban, and therefore it should not be done. Those who allow it, they say that since a chicken anyway can't be brought on the Mizbeach, there's no concern of it looking similar to a korban because it's obviously not a korban. And finally, says the Ramah, the innards of the chicken, one throws it al hagagis, on the roofs, or bechotzer, or in the courtyard, in an open place, in a place where it can be taken by the birds who are around. There are two reasons for this custom. One is, since chickens very commonly eat food which does not belong to their owners, it belongs to somebody else, so they're pecking and eating from food which is essentially stolen, we want to show that we're keeping far from the Aveira of Gezel. It's a way of symbolizing and reminding ourselves to keep far from Gezel, so we throw away the innards and we don't have anything to do with them. A second point is that it's by throwing the innards to the other birds who are looking for food to eat, it's a way of expressing Rachmanus, of being merciful towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creatures, towards the birds, expressing our concern for them, and we hope by that to bring to us HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Rachmanus of Rachem of Al Kol Ma'asav. Moving on to the next simon, Tov Reish Vav, She'efayis Adam Chaverei Be'erev Yom HaKippurim, that one should appease one's fellow man on Erev Yom Kippur. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Averis Shimon Adam LaChaverei, a sin which is between a person and his friend, between one and his fellow man, to the exclusion of Averis Ben Adam LaMokim, between Hashem and a person, interpersonal Averis, Ein Yom HaKippurim Mechaper, Yom HaKippurim does not atone, Ad She'efaisenu, until one appeases the person who has been wronged. Even if all one did was to aggravate somebody with words, as one didn't cause him any physical harm or any financial harm, nevertheless, so one still has to go to him and appease him. Because even to upset somebody with improper speech is also an Issur. It's called Oinas Devarim, and therefore one needs to go to him and ask his forgiveness. Now, although the mitzvah, the practice or mitzvah of asking forgiveness from somebody who has been wronged, who you have wronged, is something which could and should be done the whole year round. Nevertheless, if the opportunity hasn't particularly come up, or it's somewhat difficult in some way, or there's some reason, one can put it off. One doesn't dafka have to ask the mechila right away. But when it comes, Erev Yom Kippur, it's called a mitzvah, which is Zamanoi Hayom. That is its time, because the pasuk says, "Bayom hazeh yechaper aleichem." Hashem is mechaper for us on Yom Kippur, but mikol chateseichem lefnei Hashem titharu. But you have to first purify yourself from everything from which you can purify yourself, and therefore Erev Yom Kippur is the time to deal with these things. Most certainly, if a person has money which he has gained through some sort of issa, whether it was through stealing, whether it was through oinah, through overcharging in a way which is forbidden by halacha, one should make sure to return the money. And even if the person who has been wronged has got no idea that he is owed the money, one should nevertheless make a point of returning it. And if there is some sort of suffix, some sort of doubt on whether it needs to be returned or not, one should make sure to consult a halachic authority telling him all the details without trying to hide anything. Now the Shulchan Aruch proceeds to tell us how exactly this procedure of asking for forgiveness should be done. So obviously one goes to him, one asks for forgiveness, and ideally the Mishnah Berurah says one should go oneself. But if it's difficult, one can send a shliach, one can send an agent to go on your behalf. And particularly if you think that it's more likely that you'll be given forgiveness by sending somebody else, which sometimes could be the case, then on the contrary, one should send a shliach. One should do it in whatever manner is more likely to bring about the makeup between the two of them. Now continues the Shulchan Aruch, if at first the victim does not want to give forgiveness, he's not appeased, one should go a second time and a third time. Each time one should take with him 3 people, because this is a sort of sign of humility. You come to him and you beg him and you show him that you're really sorry. But if after these 3 times he's still not appeased and he still doesn't give you forgiveness, you're not obligated to go further than that. That's the extent that you're obligated to go. Nevertheless, if one wishes to go further, one is permitted to do so. Proceeds the Ramah, nevertheless, having done this, having gone 3 times and not been able to receive his forgiveness, then one should announce lifnei asara in front of 10 people. One should make an announcement in front of 10 that I've asked him for forgiveness and I've done what I'm obligated to do. And the reason for this is so that people shouldn't think that you are in some way negligent. You're putting on the side your obligation of asking for forgiveness, and because of that, some place can say that this practice of calling 10 people and saying in front of them that I've asked for forgiveness only applies to wrongdoings which are well known, something which is public, people know about it. So then people might think that you haven't asked for forgiveness, so you publicize that you have asked for forgiveness. But if the wrongdoing is not well known anyway, it's anyway something private between you and another person, then there's no need to call 10 people and start announcing it. The Imru Rabbi says the Shulchan Aruch, now if the person who was wronged is your Torah teacher, then then one should even go many times ad she is pious until he is appeased. The Hamoichel, says the Ramah, the one who has been wronged and needs to give the forgiveness, lo yeh achzori melimchol, he should not be cruel and he should give the forgiveness having been asked. Unless he has some reason where he truly intends for the good of the one who is asking for forgiveness, where perhaps, let's say, the victim realizes that he's not truly sorry and he's going to do the same thing again, and if you don't stick it out until he truly feels that he's done something wrong and he needs forgiveness and so on, he's going to just go back and continue this Havera. So if a person really knows that, then he has the right not to give the forgiveness. But otherwise, generally, one should not withhold the forgiveness, one should give it right away. And the Mishnah Berurah mentions the famous Mamar of Chazal, that Kol HaMavir Al Midoisov, Ma'avirin Al Kol Pshav, whoever is not particular about the wrongdoings that have been done to him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also forgives his wrongdoings. Rabbeinu Yomi in Shari Tshuva calls this Maimar Chazal a Pesach Tikva Nichpod Ma'oid, a very important and significant point of hope for us on Yom Kippur. So indeed, one should give forgiveness as far as possible. Continues the Shulchan Aruch, but however, the imhoitzi olav shem ra, if the wrongdoing which was done is that somebody spread false rumors about you, then then the victim is not obligated to forgive. And the reason being is quite simple, because the victim can say to himself, well, it's very nice that you're coming now and asking me for forgiveness after having spread all these false rumors, but now that the damage is done, we can't go and start explaining to everybody that it was all false and so on and so forth. There'll be people who will have heard the false rumors, but they haven't heard that you've come to me for forgiveness and you actually say that it was all false. So then he doesn't have to forgive him. See base. In Meis Asher Chotaloi, if the person against whom one sinned has already passed away, so you might have thought, oh, he's passed away, what can be done now to obtain forgiveness? No, in fact, there is what to do about it. Maybe Asara B'nei Adam, one brings 10 people, and one visits the grave of the dead person, for Omer, in front of his grave, one then says, I have sinned to the God of Israel, and to this individual against whom I have sinned. And the Mishnah Berurah says that you shall also mention clearly what the sin was. And the custom is, if this needs to be done, it is done on Erev Yom Kippur. And once one goes through this procedure, the halacha tells us that we are entitled to presume that if this person would have been alive, he would have been happy to forgive him, and it is considered akin to actual forgiveness. The reason we take 10 people is because we know that when we have 10 people, the Shechina comes. That's like we have a minyan or any Dover Shebektusha, we need 10 people because that is when the Shechina rests. And we presume that in honor of the Shechina who has come along with these 10 people, the deceased person would be happy to forgive the one who has wronged him. Mishnah Berurah makes some discussion over here about somebody who called somebody else a mamzer. Somebody who called somebody else a mamzer, does he have to also go and ask forgiveness from the parents of that person? Because by calling somebody a mamzer, you obviously give the impression that his parents behaved wrongly.
Just the mother.
No, it could be, it depends what's meant by a mamzer. It could be if you mean that his father is his father, but his father had some relationship with another woman, so then he's behaved wrongly. So it could be the father, it could be the mother. You're right, the classic application would probably be the mother, yes?
Could have been the father's fault.
Right.
Yeah, okay. It could, yeah, so I'll call upon him, you've given some impression that the parents have behaved wrongly, and therefore perhaps one needs to go and also ask forgiveness from the parents, even if they're deceased, like in the case over here. But some say that no, it's more of, unfortunately, a sort of name, a disgraceful name, without meaning necessarily it's really what happened. It's just an expression, and therefore one's not obligated to go to the parents and ask them mechila as well. Seif Gimel. There is an institution of the early authorities who institutes a cherem shem ra al hamesim, not to spread false bad rumors about people who have already deceased. In other words, although the Gemara says that the people who have passed on are not really, either they don't know or do not care about what people say about them in this world. So in essence, there's no absolute Torah prohibition of speaking bad about people who are no longer with us. It's not like speaking Motzi Shem about people who are here, but nevertheless, there is a takana of Chazal, not of Chazal, of the early authorities, not to do this, and therefore somebody who has done this also needs to do teshuvah and ask forgiveness about having done this. Okay, Seif Dalet. Seif Dalet deals with the custom which there is to be toivel in a mikveh on Erev Yom Kippur, and there also was a custom for people to receive malchus lashes on Erev Yom Kippur. This Seif deals with the details of this custom. Let's just mention that the custom of being lashed, of receiving lashes in Erev Yom Kippur, which was a sort of zeicher to the lashes which Beis Din gave when Beis Din operated for many averos which were done willfully on purpose. Beis Din would give an oynesh, a punishment of malchus, of lashes, and this was a sort of zeicher to the lashes which Beis Din gave, and it was also supposed to bring a certain level of kapara. Nowadays, this minhag is not widely practiced, although I think it is still practiced in some places.
In the Hasidic world, but it's very calm. Usually the person gets down in front of the Olam, and the Rebbe or the Rav of the shul will take his gartel, and it's,
very lightly.
But it's still a busha, and it's still, it fits into the box, but that is definitely not the malchus in the capacity of what's being discussed here.
Yeah. Okay, and the reason some suggest is because perhaps nowadays we're not on the madrega to appreciate the sort of kapara angle which there is in this, and people might simply poke fun at the custom, and so to avoid something which is not going to be correctly understood, the custom has been put on the side. So now says the Shulchan Aruch, Yochel litbel velilkois, one can perform these activities, going to the mikveh and receiving the lashes, Mosei Sheyirtza, when everyone wishes to do so, on Erev Yom Kippur, Rak Sheyir Koidem Halayla, provided it's any time during the day, before nightfall. The Mishnah nevertheless says that there is an ideal time for this to be done, that ideally it should be, some say, before Mincha, which is when the first vidui of Erev Yom Kippur is done, and therefore it's appropriate for these activities to have been done before. And some say, on the contrary, no, it should be close to Yom Kippur, and therefore it's done after the Suda Samar Sekas, quickly before Yom Kippur. So those are the two times, but those are just ideal times, but they can be done at any time at all. For One does not make a bracha on the tefillah, because this is simply a minhag, and therefore no bracha is made. Ve'ein tzarich, says the Ramah, ve'ein tzarich litboil rak pam achas belui vidui mishum kari. One simply needs to dip oneself in the mikveh one time only. One does not need to recite any vidui mishum kari, because the reason for this tefillah is because of tumas kari. Just to explain a little more clearly, in Simon Peiches, much earlier on in Shulchan Aruch, it was mentioned an idea that a man who has experienced tumas kari, a seminal emission, should visit the mikveh before tefillah, before davening, before Kriyas Shema, and so forth. Now, the Shulchan Aruch over there rules that although there is such an idea, there is an Indian to do such a thing, it is not absolutely obligatory. Somebody who doesn't wish to do so is not obliged to do so. It's considered a good practice, but it's not obligated. Over here,
the shower the Kohen says also works, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to actually say a little more about that over here as well. Over here, the Ramah is telling us that even though this is not obligatory, it is customary for everybody to be particular about this before Yom Kippur, so that the tefillahs which are said in Yom Kippur will be with the appropriate kedusha and tara, which is required on Yom Kippur. Now, there were other authorities who said that the idea of going to Tevilah on Erev Yom Kippur has nothing to do with tumas keri. It is simply part of teshuvah procedure. Having said that, there are at least two practical ramifications of this question. What is the tefillah for? Is it for tumas keri, or is it for part of teshuvah procedure? If it's because of tumas keri, then we have what the Ramah has just said to us now, that one only needs to dip once, and one doesn't need to recite any vidui while doing so, because this has nothing to do with teshuvah procedure, and therefore it's a let's say a dry halachic idea. You dip once in the mikveh, you become tahor, you don't need anything further, and therefore there's no Indian to dip more than once, and there's no Indian to recite vidui while you're doing this. The Mishnah, however, mentions that there are some, as we said, who said differently, and they say that no, this tefillah is teshuvah related, and therefore all sorts of other ideas could be connected to it. It could be an Indian to dip, some say 3 times, and I'm sure the Hasidim may have
7 times.
More numbers and different things. Mishnah mentions an idea of 3 times, and there are some authorities who also mention an idea of saying a vidui while in the mikveh. Nevertheless, those who do this have to be careful that they don't mention any Shem Hashem. It's obviously not an appropriate place to be mentioning the Shem Hashem, and therefore one has to be careful what exactly one says while one is there. Now, what proceeds? Now, since the Ramah is taking this tefillah as being simply a procedure by which to become pure from tumas keri, we can apply the same idea which applies as mentioned in Simon Peiches, where a person purifies himself from Tumas Keri, where pouring over you 9 kav of water is also a manner of fulfilling the Takonos Ezra. 9 kav is showing exactly how much it is in nowadays measurements, but it's something in the region between 12 and 20 liters. And many contemporary poskim say that this can also be performed, as was mentioned, by taking a shower.
And using 2-minute shower.
2-minute shower. Okay. I think it might depend a little bit on the water pressure of your shower. And every person can do an experiment by filling up a 1 liter bucket, see how long it takes for 1 liter, and then you can see how long it takes for longer than that. And let's just finish off this sermon. Somebody who a close relative passed away between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and therefore he is sitting Shiva. He will be allowed to wash and go to the Mikva on Erev Yom Kippur to Yom Kippur Mavatul Shiva. Because Yom Kippur has the din of a Yom Tov, we know the basic concept that a person who's sitting Shiva, Loyal Leinu, and then a Yom Tov arrives in the middle of the Shiva, the Yom Tov stops the Shiva ends. And not only does the Shiva end, but actually shortly before the Yom Tov, one's permitted already to go and take a shower in honor of the Yom Tov, because the Shiva has now ended, so the halachos of Shiva are no longer incumbent upon. Now, says the Ramah, now even though the minhag, although it's not basic halacha, but the accepted minhag is actually not to take at least a regular shower for the entire period of the shloshim, and the Shiva, only the Shiva has ended. When Yom Tov comes, the Shiva has ended, but shloshim has not ended. So nevertheless, how am I allowing you to take a shower and go to the mikveh? Says the Ramah, Tvilas mitzvah mutter. This custom of not taking a shower during the entire shloshim only extends to regular shower, does not extend to Tvilas mitzvah, to going to the mikveh for a mitzvah purpose. And since one's allowed to go to the mikveh, one's allowed to also take a wash before going to the mikveh to prepare oneself and to clean oneself for visiting the mikveh.